Thank you for joining us on the Right of Way Report, a podcast by Pikeoff OTA. You can join us here every Monday morning at 10 a.m., where we will bring you updates on legislation, litigation, and landowner information.
Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you doing?
Yeah, hanging in there.
Good. Can everyone hear us all right? We got some people watching. We got a good show for you today. It's been a while. I feel like it's been a while since we've been on, but it's only been 2 weeks. We've been doing things, summer things, surviving this ridiculous heat.
Mm-hmm.
Have you been in the pool? Swimming or anything?
I haven't. I've been doing home stuff. Nathan is moving out, and so we are in the process of moving some of his things, and me trying to sort of semi-set up an office in his room so I can have my own office space to do this now instead of a shared office space. So anyway, so it's been kind of interesting trying to get things moved around. And Natalie's getting ready to move out, going back to college. And so we're trying to get beds organized and all the furniture purchased to furnish all these places, because she'll be living in a house now instead of in a dorm room. And so it's like, we've got lots of remodel projects and all kinds of fun stuff going on. What about you? What, you've been traveling? You've been having fun. What have you been up to?
Soccer nationals in Denver, which I thought was going to be cooler than Oklahoma, but it turns out it was still 100 degrees there. So it was, and you're playing at 2:30 in the afternoon. It's pretty brutal. And I was just sitting there under an umbrella. I can't imagine the girls running for 80 minutes. But then we came back and I had some eggplant in my garden and some small tomatoes and some squirrels that are stealing my green tomatoes and deer that are eating my flowers in the front for the first time in 20 years. So I don't know. And then we had 3 raccoons in the chicken coop this morning. So it's been an exciting couple of weeks, but no, they didn't get any chickens this time, which was good.
That's good. Good. Because they're usually not very nice to chickens. So
we've lost 45 since January 1st.
And
it takes a while from the lay, so you don't want them to take them out, and then you got to start over again. But we're hopeful that our 18 that we have now will continue to lay, and we'll get some more this fall when it gets a little bit cooler, and we don't have to worry about rat snakes taking them out too.
Yuck.
The life of a small-time farmer. It's hard work.
I miss having chickens. It is. It's hard work, but man, it's so rewarding. I miss the chickens. We had some fun ones. Our kids had a good time naming them. We had Baker Layfield, and now I'm drawing a blank on some of the other ones. We had some good names though. I'll have to have Nathan remind me of what some of their names were. But anyway, we have a good show today. We have Rob Normand coming on here in a few minutes. I'm going to talk about all kinds of things. So What else you got planned for today, Amy?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention a little bit of the environmental stuff that we've been videoing over on the west side of town, right about where Moore is dumping their effluent out of their city, and it's not exactly 98% pure water. So we need to talk about that, and I'm going to point you to the good video to watch on that, and just keep you updated on how it's going for the people impacted along the east-west connector. And then
Sounds good.
As we move forward in the summer, we want to talk about some of the lawsuits that are out there. The legislature is still getting sued on House Bill 2263, and we've got the initiative petition lawsuit, and then we've got the TIF lawsuit, and then we've got our lawsuit, and so we want to just keep everybody updated with that, because some of them have been in review now for over a year, which is a long time. So maybe everybody that's new and wasn't impacted before doesn't know about what's been going on. So we'll just kind of review and bring people up to speed.
Sounds good. All right. Well, shall we go ahead and bring Rob in?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right.
Hi, Rob.
Hey there. Looks like I'm on.
Yes.
You're on now.
Okay.
How's it going?
Says my name right and everything.
How's your summer?
Oh, my summer's been eventful. as you might expect. Now, you guys have
Yes.
been talking about chickens and names of chickens and hazards for chickens. Uh, People in Norman who are on and watching will remember a big storm event a couple of weeks ago where we had winds the equivalent of a Category 3 hurricane. Uh, our house and yard were in the front lines of that, so we're still dealing with debris and roof damage and insurance companies and all that sorts of stuff. And of course, the summer's been eventful with topics of this podcast: pike off lawsuits, arena TIF lawsuits, all that good stuff.
Yeah, for sure. Keeping us hopping.
Yes,
The OTA fights MMA style, but we fight with facts and
right,
with facts and truth,
right.
and hope that the judicial system has intellectual honesty. So that's good.
Well, yes, that's what you hope for with a judge, is that they will decide cases on the law and the facts before them, and not the status of the parties or the power of the parties, or just the personal what's going on personally in the mind of the judge. And that is the definition of a good judge: is one that thoroughly reviews, one that thoroughly pays attention to the law and the facts and rules on the basis of them.
Well, Rob, we have some new people that have joined Pike Off OTA or watching since we started in 2022. I think we got a big influx of people about a year ago. So do you want to take everybody through how we started this fight and the lawsuits that we lobbed in the beginning, and then walk us through to what we're working on right now?
Sure. That's a big loadful, but I'll try to boil it down as best I can.
The main points. The main points.
Yeah, obviously the whole thing started with what was to regular folk a huge surprise announcement that the Turnpike Authority was going to put 2 new turnpikes into the Norman area, into McLean County areas, into rural Cleveland County areas. And for many people living in those areas, they might have remembered that there had once been a proposal to do this some 20 years ago. And the Turnpike Authority and ODOT had said, well, we're not going to do it. Well, they came back about 20 some years later and decided and just announced, and really didn't care what the people thought, whether they wanted it or not. They said, we're going to do this. So we immediately started 2 strains of lawsuits. One, people will remember Stan Ward. Unfortunately, Stan's now deceased. Stan started an Open Meetings Act lawsuit, which made the contention, hey, this is a sneak attack. This is a surprise. You did open meetings where you put together this whole plan and gathered together all kinds of people behind the scenes. And then in your open meetings, you didn't tell anybody until sometime later. And then there was another strain, which was the Pike Off strain, where we picked up on some serious statutory problems they had in their authorizations and said, hey, we don't care how you want to do these. You can't do these. You're statutorily non-authorized. Both cases started in Cleveland County District Court with a judge from out of county who was handling the case. And we got treated very well by that judge. Things went well for us down there. Eventually, the OTA, as they can do with some of their special jurisdictional statutes, managed to get those cases landed in the Supreme Court. In the Open Meetings Act case, they got it landed in the Supreme Court because they lost at the trial court level. In our case, of course, they didn't want to dare have that litigated in a trial court level, so they just took our case to the Supreme Court before we got a ruling on whether you can do these at the district court level. Now, in those cases, both those cases, we got in a situation where we eventually lost by narrow decisions in what I'll call the Pike Off version. They call it a bond validation case. I'll call it the Pike Off version, in some fractured opinions 4 of them to be exact. The Supreme Court that existed at the time, Oklahoma Supreme Court, narrowly decided that the OTA could do these lawsuits, could do these turnpikes. And so from that point forward, the OTA started barreling through to do these turnpikes. But we had spirited, wonderful dissents from who are now the Chief Justice and Vice Chief Justice of the Supreme Court that we think got the argument right. And you can read those, people listening to the podcast can read those for themselves, and see who they thought got the better side. We think the dissent got the better side of that, and we can point out who, where, when, and why very well. Well, nevertheless, we have to move on. And what happens is the OTA starts in earnest to work on doing these cases, doing these turnpikes. And that left us getting to a point where we knew we might get to anyway, which was having to file a federal lawsuit. And a federal lawsuit which says, hey, on the entirety of this east-west connector, you are trying to build this thing, and you have started building this thing without getting the required permits you're supposed to get from the federal agencies, without having the federal agencies and you, the OTA, do the due diligence you're supposed to do of a wide variety, environmental, cultural, archaeological, all sorts of things. You haven't done what you're supposed to do. You need to be doing a full-blown, thorough environmental impact statement, and you haven't done anything. So you got to stop. And you got to go back and you've got to go through that environmental due diligence, all that other federal due diligence. You've got to get a permit. And oh, by the way, the permit is not just a rubber stamp thing where you fill out a paper, pay a fee, and they say, okay. You still have to decide, the federal agencies still have to make a determination of whether you get permit and authority to do this, especially across the Canadian River. And that's kind of the gist of our lawsuit in federal court. We filed the complaint. We have a motion for preliminary injunction pending, and we have to get the court to set that motion for preliminary injunction, at which time we will argue that this project has to be shut down pending the OTA complying with federal law.
And
So what did I miss?
no, that was a great summary.
Okay.
So I just want everyone to know, and you know, Pike Off OTA exists really to document everything that the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority is doing. And obviously we want to stop the turnpikes, but I think one of the main missions is to bring everything to light. So sunlight is the best disinfectant. So they're not following what they're supposed to do. We are launching lawsuits. We have very good arguments. We have very good lawyers that are making these arguments. We're going all the way up to the Supreme Court. Now we're in federal court. We're trying along the way to document everything so that the next community that gets impacted by the turnpike has all of the information that's available. And we hope there's not a next community, but we bring it up all the time. You know, the Kickapoo got built and people in Norman didn't even know. They picked on 100 people. They took 100 properties, 104 properties, and then they tried to get help, but you know, we just didn't know about it. Now Pike Off exists to try to bring the communities from Oklahoma together, so together we can try and stop the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority from building any more turnpikes, and probably, I would say, sunsetting the entire system at some point.
Yeah, and I'd say what the public needs to know, and the people who may be in the path of the South Extension or in the path of the East-West Connector on stretches where it comes up further toward the Kickapoo and I-40, is the whole thing isn't done yet. I mean, we have a vision for a federal lawsuit strategy for defense of eminent domain cases, and defense and challenges to the South Extension And then ultimately, the end game would be an initiative petition to do things like wind the OTA down for good, to do things like say ideas that we can use for an initiative petition is we're not going to have any more turnpikes without the voice of the people acting. Things like that. You're not just going to decide that you want to build a turnpike here, there, or someplace where you make a reach on an authorization and say, oh, well, this kind of fits within this authorization, even if it doesn't really. We're going to go do it. We want to put a route here and we're going to do it. We're going to bring the people back into that decision of whether, when, how, and if we ever have any more turnpikes.
Yeah, the initiative petition to make a constitutional change would be amazing.
Yeah.
Because we've been trying to make legislative changes for the past 4 years, as people know, and we've tried to sunset these authorizations. I put in the comments the list of authorizations that are currently in statute. There's 35 of them, and they just changed one of them materially, the bridge over the river in the Arkansas River near Bixby. Well, originally in statute, it was that the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority would build it, but then they'd turn it back over to the people after the bonds were paid off for free. They took all of that language out and just said, now they're authorized to build a bridge across the Arkansas River in the vicinity of Bixby, period. And so your legislators pushed that right through. That went through in about 17 hours, I think, after they took one of our shell bills. And so, but we've been trying to sunset the bills, and we got all the way through both houses, both committees, and then we got stuck in the last committee. So it's almost like the legislators are not willing to remove the 17 statute authorizations that the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority comes out in public and says they want to remove. The legislators argue with us, well, we don't need it now, but what if we need it in 20 years? And I say, well, just do what the people in Bixby did. They got their authorization through in 18 hours. And they hem and haw and then kill our bill. So I think, honestly, at this point, the initiative petition is probably the only way to permanently change the way the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority does business.
Yes, it's kind of like on the national level, you hear the story of forever wars, and we need to quit having forever wars. But we need to quit having forever turnpikes.
Yes.
This whole notion that a legislature acting in the way the world acted in the 1980s, the notion that you can let that lay there and then come back 40 years later and say, oh, we found this, let's do this, when the world has changed. And the world's going to keep changing, and the world's going to change fast. And we need to find better ways to do transportation than turnpikes. We needed to find a way to do better transportation than turnpikes long, long ago.
Yeah.
So yes, we need to stop this idea of forever turnpikes, which sounds like exactly what they did with Bixby. Is they took the original concept, which is build something we decide we need or want with toll money, pay off the tolls, and then turn it over to being a free road, where if you work with the federal government, if you spend wisely at the state level, you can do just fine. Mm-hmm. But as they did with every other turnpike, they've decided to make it a forever turnpikes.
Correct. And what people might not understand is that we have statutes, and then the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority has their trust agreements. So it's contract law. And their trust agreements and their statutes are written in the way that Robert Moses wrote his authority for New York City when all that was happening. And the authority became, the trust agreements and all of that contract law actually usurped all the legislatively authorized law. And it just was in perpetuity until someone after the 50th year took down Robert Moses, and he fell out of grace. We need the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority somehow politically to fall out of grace, because what they're doing right now and how they're treating people and their whole business operation is just totally anti-ethical to how citizens should be treated with due process and the Constitution. But I guess, what can people do besides the initiative petition? What do you think the people out there that are in the path and getting ready to be taken, partial or full, and the community around them? We have 600 homes and property directly affected, thousands immediately affected within a half a mile that'll be living with a turnpike in eternity. What are some other things that we could be doing as a community to help stop the onslaught of the OTA?
Well, landowners need to be ready to band together and contact Pike Off OTA about our grassroots resources for doing that, for being someone who can help you communicate with each other, being someone who can help you with the cause, and being someone who can help landowners pool resources. Ideally, landowners would band together and stop getting picked off one by one by the OTA. And this is not just the OTA. This is condemning authorities in general. Whenever they get a stretch of a path of land that goes a long ways, whether it be like a energy transmission corridor, a pipeline corridor, or a turnpike, what they're going to do is the condemning authority here, the OTA, is going to get their right-of-way contractors, contract with them, and then those right-of-way contractors are going to go off as early as they can and try to pick the landowners off, and take advantage of their distress and their stress at the situation, especially if it's their home, or especially, let's say, if it's a business that's been operating forever in a perfect place, and now they're getting slammed and whacked, or they're losing their home. They're going to be under stress, and these right-of-way contractors are going to play on that and get them to sell out early for a low price and not fight the taking on any good grounds they might have to fight the taking. Landowners need to not fall for that. Even in the normal condemning situation, landowners need to show they're willing to fight for their rights, whether that be some grounds to defend the taking and say the taking is wrong, and they need to be able to fight for, if they can't win that fight, they need to be prepared to fight for the maximum value they can get, which the right-of-way contractor and the condemning authority is not going to tell them. And to give you some concrete examples, when you get down to the point, if you're just talking about, okay, let's get beyond the point of fighting their right to take the property, and let's talk about maximization of value. We've seen, and I had an example the other day of someone I had a relationship with who went out and sold out early on one tract of property, and now they're in a situation where the OTA is needing the property, and the OTA is feeling like they've got a race to build this thing, and they've got a property in the way there. And lo and behold, there's a lot more money on the table now. Yeah. That the OTA needs the property than years ago, when they did it. And still, in that case, the money that comes out of the box from the OTA or the condemning authority at the very first is usually just not going to be fair value for the home.
Yeah, agreed. We've collected all the data, and we've seen some pretty abysmal first offers. And they are picking on the elderly. They're picking on the people that don't have a lot of money to fight, and it's pretty awful. And when the people have stuck their feet in the sand and dragged their feet, the money that they're getting is way above what they started with. So we've tried
they have some classic.
Oh, go ahead.
Classic tricks in their book too, like they send them a letter and they make first contact and they say, Well, looks like you're going to have to be out of there by some ridiculously early date. And so that's how they start getting them to rush around and do these things. And then they tell them, well, we're going to have an appraiser and surveyors and engineers out here in a couple weeks. And if you don't let them in, if you don't let them on, and if you don't cooperate with them, we're just going to do the appraisal on the basis of county records. And they insinuate that the landowner is going to be stuck with that. The landowner is never stuck with the way the OTA or the other condemning authority decides to proceed. The landowner has legal rights and needs to abide by them. Get hold of Pykoff, get hold of attorneys who know what they're doing in this area, and understand that you have to have more than a healthy skepticism. You have to have an extreme amount of doubt for what you're getting hit with by these condemning authorities and right-of-way contractors.
Yeah, and we have a comment that talks about flooding. And so this person says 16 property owners with history of flooding 1,000 feet north of proposed turnpike will be 12 to 30 feet high berm of dirt. Hope the drainage is appropriate. Okay, so let me tell you something about, and then Rob can jump in, but I want, if you have not watched the documentary, you need to watch it. Because there's a family named the Pollards, and they were taken, their land was taken, has been in their family for a century, and the Kickapoo went right through it, and they dumped a whole bunch of red dirt all over their land that they used to farm and ranch, and the drainage coming off the Kickapoo was completely inadequate, and it still is, and it caused rutting, and it caused washout, and they are currently in litigation, and there's a whole bunch of people in litigation about flooding and drainage around the turnpikes. And Kelly can attest, and Rob can probably attest, the turnpike authority will just keep you in court and hope to wait you out with that. So what you want to do is make sure you get something in writing beforehand and not believe what they say, because even when they say it, sometimes they don't do it. But I'm going to put the documentary link in the comments to watch it, and don't ever think that what they say they're going to do, even if you have a contract with them, that they're going to provide adequate drainage and assure you that no flooding will occur. If you are 30 feet below their embankment, you can bet that if there's flooding there now in those 10-mile flats, that there's going to be even more flooding because of all the impervious surfaces that are being added.
Yes.
Yeah, so
and
Rob,
that
you
not
mentioned
only-
that. Oh, go ahead.
Yes, and all that not only needs to be the subject of legislative reform. You need to understand that that's going to be a consequence at the outset, especially say for people like we saw in the documentary, people who may have a piece of their property taken, but not all of it. They may be left with junk, even if they can't foresee it. And there's supposed to be a concept in Oklahoma called damage to the remainder on a partial taking. And you have to have good professionals and good people who are willing to fight for that, as well as just fight for whatever the value may be of the part of the property that's actually being taken.
Yeah, and I would say that I've read, Kelly found an environmental report, well, let me put it in air quotes, an environmental report that talked about sound. And so I should rewrite or just repost the Substack I wrote on this. When decibel levels rise above a certain amount, the transportation authorities are required to put in sound barriers to protect the people that are living right next door. And we can talk about this in more detail in another podcast where I can bring up the numbers, but they ran a baseline decibel level along the Indian Hills, and then it was mathematical. It wasn't experimental. It was a mathematical FHWA simulation. And they said since they're going to be affecting so few people, they are not going to put up a sound wall, even though they are leaving some of the houses literally within 100 feet of the turnpike. And so that's just something people have to think about too. It's not just a negotiation about your property that's being taken. It's about what you will force them to do if you're within a certain amount of distance from them. And right now it looks like, just like along the creek where they promised the city of Jenks that they'd put up a sound wall, and they did nothing. And that's been, what, 26 years? And so they've already said in their environmental report that they are not going to be taking care of sound walls because they're impacting too few people, and it's not economically viable for them, even though they have an unlimited amount of bond money that they can go get. It just seems like over and over again, the homeowners and the citizens are at the losing side of whatever the OTA decides they are not going to do. Oh, and Kelly put up the environmental report. She put that up in the comments, so you can check it out.
Yeah, it's actually saying there was an error, so I don't know if it's going or not. Hopefully it goes. Maybe just it's showing up on YouTube comments, but not on Facebook. So if you're trying to find it on Facebook, you're not going to see it, but go to the YouTube channel and you'll see the comment under there. And if I remember correctly, it's specified that the reason they wouldn't do any sound mitigation in that area was because there was too few people, was actually because it was not feasible for the OTA.
Yeah, feasible for them.
It wasn't financially feasible for them.
I just hate that I mean, come on. They just paid a guy $16.5 million for this 35 acres. And he paid his neighbor like a tenth of that. If you know somebody, you can get paid. If you don't know anybody, they're going to screw you. And they're not going to protect your property, your way of life, the drainage, the air quality, the sound. And so it's, they say it though. The thing is, they're saying the silent part out loud. In their reports, they're telling you they're not going to do it because it's going to cost them too much money. That's crazy to me.
Yeah, it's absolutely crazy.
And they know most
100%.
people
So
over it.
They know most people won't what, Rob?
Won't take them to court over it.
Right.
Because what you have to have, you talk about these sound barriers, you have to have extremely expensive, highly specialized, niche level, where you're going to find them in the first place, experts to be able to show that the OTA analysis and the OTA conclusions aren't reliable, just like you do with an appraisal. It sounds like with all this stuff, the OTA will say, well, we generally give more than appraised value. Well, what that means is they usually get nabbed with having to pay more than their in their pocket appraiser appraised the property out at. The landowner went and got a better, more reliable appraisal. The commissioners came out and said in the eminent domain case, no, this property is worth more than the commissioners don't see the OTA's appraisal, but the commissioners come down with a better valuation than the OTA's appraiser does. So when the OTA says, oh, we do better, we pay more than appraised value, what they mean is there are enough people out there who will stand up for their rights, get their own appraisal, or fight them over a lowball appraisal, that they end up essentially having to pay more than their appraiser came in at.
Yeah, and you just said it. The people, the individual homeowners, have to want to fight. They have to want to negotiate and do it not only for themselves, but for the benefit of everybody else. And so we've been saying this from the very beginning, and we've been kind of sad to watch. I think 85 houses have now been totally turned over or taken on the east-west connector. I think it's 85. And it just makes me sad because it's not, I don't think as a civil engineer, I don't think that the road is necessary. And I think it's environmentally dangerous. So from that point of view, I can disagree with all of my professional colleagues that are in the money train. And you have to ask, when you ask a civil engineer, well, do you think you need this road? And they say, yeah, are you being paid? Are you financially benefiting from this project? And if they say yes, then you can't, you have to throw out what they're talking about, because there are no traffic studies. There's the revenue study says that it will be upside down in 10 years, and our CPA has told us that it will never pay for itself, and so it's going to be, what, $10 billion the wrong way. They'd have to raise their rates to somewhere extravagant, more than Pennsylvania turnpikes, to even come to make money. And so this whole thing, like Rob has said from the beginning, has nothing to do with transportation and everything to do with busting the East and North Norman zoning to open it up for development and make it, like you always say, Kilpatrick 2.0. And the fact that they want to make it Kilpatrick 2.0, but they're not willing to make the homeowners whole, so they can't even go out and buy a replacement property. And the one property Kelly can talk to you about, I think they got offered something like $235,000 for their 5 acres and 3-bedroom, 2-bath house. And the only 5 acres, 3-bedroom, 2-bath house that was available within a 10-mile radius of them was at $499,000. So where are these people going to move to? This is what it kills me about the eminent domain process. And Oklahoma is supposed to have some of the strongest eminent domain laws, and we don't. We started in 2006 after the state Supreme Court said that you can't use eminent domain for economic development. And then the legislature decided not to codify that. We've been trying to codify that and make it even stronger, like you brought up, Rob, the necessity. Well, we want the OTA or all condemning agencies to have to prove necessity. You don't have to prove necessity in Oklahoma. We want them to pay replacement value. You don't have to pay replacement value. So there's a lot of things that we could do to make this less painful, even though we know that the Turnpike Authority shouldn't be allowed to build these turnpikes because it's for economic development and the enrichment of a few on the backs of 600 longtime property owners that are being asked to sacrifice for the greater good. And I would call that a failure on the legislature of doing their job, for sure.
Yes, and I think we explained to the legislature, hopefully it didn't sink in, but we explained to the legislature that Supreme Court, Oklahoma Supreme Court decision was 20 years ago now. It said, no, economic development cannot be your purpose for eminent domain. And that is still the court law right now. But that does need to be legislation precisely because, heck, it needs to be a constitutional amendment, really. Heck, precisely because court decisions can change.
Right.
From generation to generation, even from year to year. And right now, all of 2 justices who were on that 2006 court are still on the court, and they were in the dissent in that case. So yes, that court case is still the law, but as with any court case, it can be precarious, and it's better to have it codified or better to have it constitutionalized. And for landowners looking at here, and not to get, to set aside the wonk right now, what we've given landowners is hopefully some hints to a lot of the tools they would have in an eminent domain case. One, the OTA will claim it doesn't have to do all the displacement compensation that it would have to do when federal funds are involved. So again, they'll lowball the homeowner or the business owner or the business tenant or whomever and say, well, the Oklahoma Supreme Court said we had to do moving expenses. So here's something for moving expenses, but we don't really have to compensate you for full displacement. I would say they're wrong, because what happened is they used to say that about moving expenses too. But the Oklahoma Supreme Court, when given that case, said no. full compensation includes more than just the reasonable value of a piece of property in fee simple. They were facing the moving expenses question in that case, but I think if the Oklahoma Supreme Court is going to be consistent, we're confronted with a case where someone really fights for full displacement compensation that you would get under the federal act. The Oklahoma Supreme Court would go with that and tell the OTA that they have to provide that full displacement compensation. So there you go. If you're a landowner and you feel you're getting a raw deal with an appraisal, or the OTA is not really fully compensating you for the displacement, you've got tools to get ready to fight them on. And the OTA doesn't fare well if they have to go to court. And in the back of their mind, they know that. They don't fare well if they have to go to court on these issues. So the landowner needs to know they've got plenty of tools to fight, and they don't need to be listening to the OTA or the right-of-way contractor as if what they're saying is gospel.
For sure. And Kelly actually collected all of the data from the Kickapoo, and of the 104 properties that were taken, 44 people took them to court, and they averaged 100% more after they took them to court than they did when they just took the money. And in fact, the one family got 600% more than the original offer, and there were a whole bunch of people within the 200 to 400% of the original offer. So you're right, Rob. I mean, the jury of our peers is always seems, I guess you can't use always in law, but like the majority of the time seems to sympathize with the homeowner and provide adequate compensation. Well, I wouldn't say adequate compensation. I would just say more compensation than was given.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So one thing I want to clarify with that, though, is that the landowners are not taking the OTA to court. It's when the settlement negotiations supposedly fail, then the Turnpike Authority will file a condemnation on the landowner. And what we mean by we really just mean that the landowner allows that process to happen, allows the Turnpike Authority to file condemnation, because that sets in motion the ability to challenge the take and to challenge the amount of the settlement. And so that's what we mean. So they bring the three commissioners with the court, they come up with a value. We call that the commissioner's award. And then once that dollar amount is established, the landowner has the ability to say, nope, we want a jury trial. So they can demand a jury trial. And that's how you get to that stage of the game. So I don't want landowners to think that you have to go hire an attorney and then file condemnation or file inverse condemnation or file some sort of a lawsuit against the Turnpike Authority. It's part of the condemnation lawsuit. So anyway, I just wanted to kind of clarify that. And since we're talking about lawsuits and fair market value and whether or not the Turnpike Authority offers a fair amount, I just wanted to pull up real fast. So this is OSCN that we have on the screen right here. And all of these this is just Cleveland County. And all of these are cases that have been filed since January 1st of 2025. Look at all of those condemnations they have filed. And one thing that's real interesting is if you look closely, the majority of these are LLCs, developers. The developers even know that they're not getting a fair offer. And that's why they're not settling. That's why they're letting the Turnpike Authority file condemnation on them so that they can demand a jury trial, because they know they're going to get more money that way and actually be fairly compensated, or hopefully more fairly compensated. At least that's my interpretation of why they let this go. Otherwise, why didn't they settle?
Yeah,
They clearly didn't feel like they got a fair shake.
Yeah, some of them are developers, some of them are just businesses in the path, and often, like you said, Kelly, these developers and businesses may probably know going in that, okay, I'm not getting the right information from the OTA and this right of way contractor. So, yeah, I'm going to get my own appraisal. I'm going to get my own attorney. Um, and they figure out real quick, and this is what I would say, is getting an appraiser and getting an attorney um, is there's an incredible amount of return on investment for doing so, is what I would say. Um, yes, you're going to pay for an appraisal. Yes, probably your best thing is you're gonna pay some money to an attorney up front. Attorneys can do these on hourly rates, retainers, creative things, contingent fees, but often what I say is look, yeah, uh, you're going to end up having to spend a little money on an appraiser. Your best investment is probably going to be to spend some money on an attorney, but you're going to come out way better in the end by doing that. And if you don't, you're going to suffer because you're not going to be able. I mean, these examples y'all are given where someone can't get a replacement house, or someone gets in a worse business deal than they were before. They're already getting whacked off a prime property. We know of examples of that going on right now, or that will continue to go on. You're getting knocked off a prime property, and you got to go somewhere else that's not nearly as good for you. And you need to be getting experts and professionals in line and at least talking to them to be able to do better than what the OTA wants you to do.
Agreed. One other thing I wanted to point people to is the Turnpike Authority. Actually, on their Access website, they have now uploaded their policy and procedure guide for acquisition, and there's some really good information in there. It's not very thorough. It's still pretty vague if you look through it, but there is some information there. So it will kind of help landowners understand the process a little bit better and kind of hold them accountable. Are they doing what they say they're going to do? Does their document, are they following their own document? We were talking about moving and relocation expenses. From the landowners that I've spoken to, just for anybody who hasn't gone through the process but is maybe looking at it and kind of wondering, you've gotten your letter, you're wondering what's going to happen, how does this work? So when they come out and appraise your property, they also bring 2 moving companies, and those 2 moving companies you need to show them everything. You need to show them all your junk. You need to show them all your trash, and you need to tell them you want all of it moved, all of it. This isn't the time to go and throw stuff out. You don't need to be, trying to clear things out and then, so that you don't have to move it all. You need to be saying, look, this is my stuff. I don't care if it's junk or not. And tell them you want it moved, and they need to move it. So, and the movers will include all of that stuff. That's one of the things that I have seen. It might be one of the more quote unquote fair compensation that I've seen so far, which hasn't been a ton, but I will say that the moving and relocate, or moving, not relocation, but the moving expenses, the moving estimates have been somewhat reasonable in some cases. So that's a good thing. But back to what Rob was saying earlier, we were talking about how some of these landowners are having the OTA is telling them, oh, it doesn't appear as though you want to work with us on this, so we're just going to have our appraiser do the appraisal through county records. I don't know if that's even legal. I mean, I guess if they have made all these attempts to contact you and you still haven't responded or something, maybe. I don't know. I'll have Rob answer that in a second. But if you look on their website and you go to the appraisal section, if I can find it again now, I've lost it. Here we go, the appraisal. It says right here that the right-of-way service provider and the appraiser shall give the property owner or his designated representative an opportunity to accompany the appraiser during the property acquisition. Now, that to me says the landowner should have the opportunity to do that. And I'm sure if you get down in the nitty gritty details, it says, shall give them an opportunity. And now there might be saying that they're only giving the opportunity the one time, and then you just didn't take them and you know go on the date that they wanted you to do this. So you passed your opportunity up. But this is why I would tell every landowner, you need to get with an attorney right from the get-go. You get your notice of interest letter, you need to hire an attorney right then and there to prevent these kinds of shenanigans from happening, because this is the stuff that I'm seeing. The landowners that have called me and talked with me have told me that they get their notice of interest and it will say, you know, let's say it's dated June the 1st. Well, take note of this, everybody, because a lot of people, even though their letter says that it's dated June the 1st, they don't actually receive it until July the 5th. Now, what it was doing between June the 1st and July the 5th, I don't know.
The form.
But if you don't, so when you do get it, it's the form letter. But when you get it on July the 1st or 3rd or whatever it is that you got it, you need to start taking a log right then and there of everything that happens, every phone call, when you receive things. Take note of all the details. What's the date on that letter? Because when the Turnpike Authority comes through and tries to say, oh, well, we've given you 3 months and you still haven't done this, you can say, actually, I didn't receive this letter until X date, which is a month past when you think I received it. So be sure you're taking good notes that way. And you really should look into hiring an attorney right from the get-go, because if you have an attorney reach out to them and say, hey, so-and-so landowner has hired us to represent them, please direct all communications through me. They're not going to tell that attorney that, oh, by the way, you've missed your opportunity to do your appraisal in person. But they are trying to force that on people right now. They're saying they're trying to rush. And this is for people on South Extension, which makes absolutely no sense. Like, they are not going to be constructing that anytime soon. There is absolutely no reason. And something else, Rob, I'll help you. Hopefully you can help clear this up. But one thing that I have heard from numerous landowners is they say, well, the reason we need to get the appraisal done right now is because that will give the landowner the longest amount of time to stay in their house. Now, I can tell you, I can't see any correlation between when the appraisal is done and how long the landowner gets to stay in their house. That end date that they want you out is set. Like, for them, it is set. So if it's, let's just say it's August 1st of 2027. Now, whether you have your appraisal done today or January of 2027, your end date is still going to be August 1st of 2027. It has no impact. The appraisal has no impact on that end date. The only thing I can think of, Rob, is they must be trying to say that, okay, if you get your appraisal done today, then you're going to have, we could potentially settle sooner, which means you will have your money sooner and you will be able to stay in your house a little bit, quote unquote, longer while having this information and having the money to go find another place. But it has no impact on the end date when you have to be out of your house, correct?
There is only one legal end date when you have to be out of your house, and it's absolutely nothing that you just mentioned. It's absolutely nothing that the OTA said. That is all just them putting things together and trying to get leverage over you in negotiations and trying to negotiate things and dictate things their way instead of the law. Here's what the law says about when you have to be out, when you lose right to possession of your property, whether it be a home, a business, or whatever. You lose your right to have possession of your property when, after the lawsuit is filed, the OTA files the condemnation lawsuit, the commissioners have entered their award, and the OTA deposits the money into court. On the South Extension, the first time that's ever going to happen is going to be years from now. Mm-hmm. That's going to be years from now. They're not even at the point where they're going to issue their little resolutions of necessity and start suing people for a long time. I would tell someone on the South Extension, you're under no deadlines. And you don't let the OTA tell you you're under any deadlines. And even on the East-West Connector, I would tell them, your deadlines are nowhere around yet. I am telling people that. I'm saying, okay, you're in a place on the East-West Connector where they're trying to hurry up and beat our federal lawsuit and beat a political process working against them, or beat a trend working against them, and get the pavement laid and get this thing done before something can intervene. Even so, it comes back to the point of, I'm hearing people say, well, they're on the East-West Connector. Well, they tell me I'm going to have to be out in like a couple months. Well, you're going to have to be out in a couple of months if you negotiate a deal that says you're going to have to be out in a couple of months. When you're really going to legally have to be out is after they file the condemnation lawsuit, after the commissioners who are appointed in the lawsuit make their determination of what it's worth, and then the OTA deposits that into court. And even then, there are legal paths where you could go to court and ask for injunctive relief and make a challenge to the necessity and ask the court for relief from that. But legally, as far as statutes and law goes, the first time they are legally entitled to your property against your wishes would be when that lawsuit has been filed by them, when the commissioners have determined what they think the property is worth, and then the OTA has deposited that money into court. And you're, by the way, entitled to take it out at that time. That's the first time that they are legally entitled to possession, unless you give them a deal in writing that gives them to it early. So that point in time is years on the South Extension, years and a lot of legal battles we can mount. That period of time is longer on the East-West Connector than these right-of-way contractors are saying.
Yeah, and Rob, the OTA says that eminent domain is the most serious thing we do. And yet they mess it up all the time. They filed a resolution of necessity on the first properties around the Canadian River without even notifying the people that they were condemning the properties. You're supposed to negotiate in good faith before you condemn the property, okay? That was their first mistake. Kelly called them on that. And then I've seen several letters. You get this one letter, and the surveyor says, hey, I need to come see this parcel, and it's this much, and I need to do the staking. There are typos all over. So one elderly couple who's been very involved with Pike Off got a letter, and it said that they were going to take 4.8 acres of their 10 acres. And I'm like, that's not right. Like, just spatially, from just a common sense standpoint, that there's no way that they're going to take 4.8. I looked at the plans, So we get it back like, oh, no, we're not taking 209,000 square feet. We're just taking 20,000 square feet. It's just 0.48 acres or something like that. So people, I don't know if there's willful negligence or they're just incompetent or what's happening, but there's typos all over. So they're inducing this fear into these people. So they're scrambling from the beginning, and thankfully Pike Off OTA exists, and Kelly exists, so we can help them through that. So we're helping to draft letters back asking, can you give us a map? Can you show us the right of way? Why are we going to let you appraise this when we don't even know what the heck you're appraising? And so we're finding that there are a ton of mistakes right up front and helping homeowners get the actual story, and then they're negotiating from a better standpoint rather than being on their heels all the time with these people coming out and honestly bringing the Oklahoma Highway Patrol out with them to get on the property. We've documented that. And so I just feel like they're being more and more aggressive. Like when it started, I didn't feel like the right-of-way agents were being as aggressive as they are right now. And they're going so fast and so furious, and they're coming to people's homes, and they're knocking on doors, and they're talking to family members that don't even own the property about the take. I don't understand how the right-of-way agents can even be talking to kids, adult children, on their parents' behalf when the adult children don't even own the property. And so there's things like this. They're pitting family member versus family member, and they're just causing, we have a lot of senior citizens in the path, and they're just scared, and we really hope that they can listen to what you said today, and listen to what Kelly says, and listen to what Pike Off OTA is saying, and know that there's things that they can do to negotiate and slow down the process, because I can't even believe from a business standpoint, and it's all one-sided business. It's not like I want to buy this, I want to sell. You're taking my home. And there's so many typos and just crazy stuff happening in these ask letters that are being sent certified mail, post-dated or pre-dated, a month and a half before the people get them. It's just the amount of fear that they're invoking in the community is kind of outrageous, and it needs to be stopped somehow by the legislature or the district attorneys or the attorney generals, or somebody needs to step up and say you can't act like this.
Well, and I think what I would say to the landowners is get with us at Pike Off, and let us help you be grassroots organizers to band together. Because also the thing to understand is in many situations, you see the OTA or the right-of-way contractors either being over-aggressive or screwing things up, because this is different than it's ever been. This is not a city trying to take your bar ditch to widen the road from 2 lanes to 4 lanes. This is not the usual road or usual acquisition of, say, a pipeline or something like that. This is displacement and destruction and taking of a nature we haven't seen before in Oklahoma for a transportation project. There are situations, there are business owners, business tenants, landowners, land tenants, farms, ranches, homes, involving all people with all kinds of challenging decisions and all kinds of challenging situations that have to be made that we've never seen before. We're in a place with terrible climate for affordable housing. So the story y'all tell earlier about someone just can't get out of the home out of the property they're having taken and into something comparable anywhere. It's just not possible. Those things didn't used to happen like they do now. With the path they're taking and where they're taking it on both turnpikes, one, they're taking legally aggressive things they've never taken before to get it done, and two, they're causing challenges that have never been seen before. So the landowner needs help. The landowner needs grassroots help. The landowner needs professional help that's a little different than maybe what they've had before. Like I said, it's not a taking of a bar ditch where you kind of go, I'm a pretty good negotiator. They lowballed me. I can get more than that. I can do a little internet research, get with my realtor or something, which is good. Do get with a realtor if you can to get some whatever you can get in the way of help. I can get a little better deal for this bar ditch than they're giving me. They're destroying things and they're doing things that have never been done before in Oklahoma as far as eminent domain goes. So landowners need to band together. They need to be prepared to fight the taking when they can on reasonable necessity grounds, things like that. They don't need to be folding to the OTA and buying into you have to be out of the home, or you have to let us come on X date for an appraisal or you're screwed. And they need to be prepared to get with professionals right away once they get that notice of interest letter. And I would say on the east-west connector, you have more time than they're telling you. And on the south extension, you've got years for us to band together this fight and actually continue to fight. The east-west connector, yes, we're in the middle of that, but we've really just begun the fight for the south extension, and we'll continue it. And all the tools are still in the toolbox for us to do that.
So, Rob, I have a question for you,
Yeah.
because I've been asked this by several landowners, and I'm not really sure. You may or may not be able to answer it in the moment. You might have to do some checking and get back with us. But so there is a lawsuit that is filed in federal court. We talked a little bit about that earlier. And so I say, okay, since Pike Off has filed this lawsuit and it's in federal court, and there's a possibility that are we all back? Okay. That there's a possibility that the court may say, okay, you guys need to put a pause on this, or actually, you didn't do everything you're supposed to do. Potentially, I don't know. I don't know if these are even actual things that could happen, but the landowners are saying that maybe maybe the lawsuit would completely stop the turnpike. I don't know if that's true or not, but anyway, let's just say we're going with that. So they're saying that they're wondering if they could tell the Turnpike Authority, look, we want to push pause on all of the negotiations that we've had so far. We do not want to move forward with an appraisal. We do not want to move forward with anything until we get a little bit more clarification from the court that the Turnpike Authority is even authorized to move forward with this project. And I don't know what to tell them because I'm not really sure what implications could come out of the lawsuit. And I don't know if you can talk about that today or not, but I do get that question a lot. So if you could help us with that at some point, that'd be fantastic.
Yes, a brave and rights conscious landowner should very much feel free to make that contention. I've gotten a couple of situations where that was water under the bridge and appraisals were already done, appointments were already made, lawsuits were already filed, time has passed or something like that. But what I would plan on doing as an attorney sitting in a condemnation case, if the timing were appropriate to do it, again, it's got to be early in the condemnation thing. If suddenly an injunction comes down and this thing is east-west connector is put to a halt, what I would say in that condemnation case when it's filed, I would say the condemnation case, as far as the landowner, as far as the OTA's right to finish the taking, is also at a halt. Because we don't know when and if they're ever going to get the right to do this project, which involves taking the land. So yes, in a sense, I would say that I would want to know the specific situation from the specific landowner in the specific point in time they're on the process. Like I said, there's a couple of situations I've observed. There's a couple of situations I've gotten the question where it's kind of, there's been some water under the bridge and things have already been done and you can't unring the bell. But yes, I would, subject to consulting with a good attorney who knows their way around this and is not just trying to factory the case through a mill and essentially tell them the landowner they have no rights and maybe just negotiate the best deal they can. The landowner who is wanting to buy time, wanting to fight, has tools in the toolbox. From my standpoint, I think the situation is coming up where a lawsuit may be filed or a lawsuit may be imminent. And I'm going to advise landowners to, hey, there's this federal lawsuit pending. There's a motion for preliminary injunction out. You have to understand that there is a legal argument to make before the OTA gets possession of the property, that their right to take possession of the property and the condemnation case itself has to be put on hold.
Yeah. So what about people the people that I've talked to are not even in condemnation yet? They've only been contacted by the Turnpike Authority, and Turnpike Authority is pressuring them to do this appraisal. And they're like, whoa. We don't even know if your project is going to be allowed to continue. And your timeline is certainly up in the air right now, depending on how this case plays out. So we don't really want to talk with you about anything until we see what the court actually says about your project. And then, maybe then we'll pick up our conversation. But we don't want to move forward with an appraisal. We don't want to discuss anything else with you until the court makes some sort of a ruling
The first thing you might
on whatever's going on with this case.
Yeah. The first thing I might want to suggest to that landowner is tell them, hey, like, for example, some of them are wanting to come do the appraisal in July, or some of them who will want to come do the appraisal in early August. They might want to just start off. This is part of negotiation stuff. and not to reveal too much, but they might want to say, hey, how about September? How about we look at dates in September? This happens in the legal system and in the negotiation system all the time. And you don't necessarily have to play all your cards at once, but you just come back and say, no, July 31st is not a good date. We think maybe, what do y'all think about sometime in September, and see what the OTA says. And then you step by step start to, and I said September for kind of a purpose. And then you say, well, what are they going to come back with? And then you see them playing their hand more. I mean, often this negotiation process is more like a game of chess or a game of poker, where you don't reveal your whole hand at once, but you make moves based upon what you know your hand is and what your rights are. They're doing that. You bet they're doing that. They know they're not entitled to possession of property until they filed a lawsuit, until the condemnation, until the commissioners have entered their assessment of what it's worth, and until the OTA has deposited money into court. Now, they know on the OTA end, they're not entitled to possession of anyone's property at any time until at least all that's happened. And they know that that's a long time away. On any property on the East-West Connector, it's probably still months away. On any property on the South Extension, it's still years away. But yet, without telling the landowner their rights, they say, well, looks like you're going to have to be out in a couple of months. Well, maybe the landowner needs to be doing the same thing and saying, no, that's too early. You got anything? What can we do about maybe September? Without committing to anything. That's the way I would play it personally. And a good reason to get hold of an attorney or an experienced professional who negotiates this. You just kind of say, nah, let's not do it in July, or let's not do it on August 7th. What can we do about September? And then see what the condemning authority says.
Yeah, so that's exactly what they've been doing. And that's when they come back and say, well, since you're not willing to work with us in the time frame that we're wanting to work with, to get this done, then we're going to have to do the appraisal through county records. And so that, to me, falls under what we're looking at right here, where it says, this is on their own document, it says, no threats or coercion shall be used by the right-of-way service provider. That feels like a threat to me.
It's good faith
that
negotiation.
Feels like they're trying to coerce me into doing.
Yeah.
So they shouldn't be saying, well, okay.
And the landowner has to understand that all this stuff, there's a difference between what they say and what they do and what they post. Yes, good faith negotiations are a matter of law, but some of the stuff they may say about it may have no basis in the law whatsoever. Now, if they do go ahead and pull that card and say, well, we'll just go get county records and do an appraisal based off of that. Well, guess what happens when they get into court and try to present that as opposed to an appraisal that's done the right way? They can get themselves in a situation where they have an unreliable appraisal. And you can show they didn't work with you to get a reliable appraisal put together.
And that's exactly why we're telling landowners that it's very important that you take notes. Keep a diary of when you receive the letter. What is the date on the letter? Write down every single time you have communications with the Turnpike Authority. You need to be writing it down. You need to follow up with an email that hits all of the details that you talked about in a phone call or in person. That way you have a written log that you can refer back to and show the court, if necessary, at a later point in time. Look, this is us trying to ask for time. This is us trying to ask that our rights be, that they're not violating our rights, and so that they're not negotiating in good faith. You need that documentation. So please make sure you're doing that, because they will try to pull this stuff at every turn. And another reason why you should just go ahead and call an attorney right from the get-go. You get that letter, your very first step is call an attorney every single time.
And it's hard to do. I'll acknowledge that it's hard to do. It's hard to think about, oh, I'm going to have to maybe spend some money on some professionals, or oh, I'm going to have to bowl up against a bunch of stress, and it may be just easier for me to run off. But you got to understand that if you do show you're willing to fight, and you do show that you're willing to assert your rights, and that you don't trust and aren't buying off on the narrative they're giving you at this point in the process, even if what you just want is the most money you can get, your way to get the most money you can get is to be willing to fight for your rights.
Yes.
And if you, and they will try to trample you every step of the way, like I said, with just these weird things that you wouldn't even know that they're doing wrong, because they may sound like they know what they're talking about. Just like, like what Amy mentioned, a scenario earlier where the right-of-way agent and the surveyor just showed up on somebody's property and start talking with a family member who happens to be there. They don't have any right property at all, but they're sitting there talking to them. Like, that's so anyway, yeah, there's all kinds of things that they're doing that they shouldn't be doing probably. And again, we talked earlier about how there are tons and tons of typos in the notice of interest letter. There are typos and errors every step of the way. It's unbelievable. And it's just a sign, in my opinion, of how they're rushing things. They are not taking the time to do quality work. They're all overworked, and you're falling through the cracks. And so, yeah, you got to hire an attorney. Got to hire an attorney.
I'll tell you another example that I see when things get a little further down the road is that appraisal. And first of all, make sure you demand the entire appraisal report from the OTA. They were supposed to have committed to the legislature to give those to all landowners, but I don't yet trust them to follow through with that. They want to try to say they don't have to give you the entire appraisal report. They'll give you a summary that doesn't tell you anything. But I've seen on more than one occasion and heard from other attorneys and heard from other people who've been through the process. So I think this does happen more than just an isolated instance. What their appraiser will do is part of the appraisal process involves getting comparable recent sales and comparing them to your property to figure out what your property is worth. Now, the appraiser has to be rigorous and reliable and ethical about doing that. The appraiser has to do true comparables. I've seen situations and have had experiences shared with me about situations where the appraisers do not get legitimate comparable properties in the process of doing their appraisals from the OTA. In other words, they might, let's say it's a property
Right.
in Newcastle, they'll go run off, and one of their comps may be something from a completely different town that really has nothing to do with what a property is worth right now in Newcastle. But they'll pick that thing out, even though there may be better comparables to pick out. They'll pick, for whatever reason, they'll pick that property out. So let's say it's a Noble or Norman or somewhere completely different than the area that they're condemning. And they'll say, well, this is a comparable property, and it just happens to be a property that didn't sell for that much. And they use it to determine what fair market value is for the property that's being condemned. And that's just not right. That's when you have to get with attorneys and appraisers, and the attorney and the appraiser especially that works for you can say, no way. I saw this. No way. You just pull up the records and you see that there's a sale of something a lot like yours just down the road that they didn't even use. They used something, 40, 50 miles away instead. That was just wrong. If you use the right comparable properties, you get a value that's much higher than they came down with. So those are the things you have to understand.
So
Yeah, so one thing you can do, and this is part of the reason why people need to be prepared before the appraiser comes, is in my opinion, it's best if you can actually show the appraiser some comparable properties. And so one thing that people need to understand is that to do the land value, they do look at like previous sales that have happened within the past year or so. They're supposed to be within your area, but they do the land sale value separately from the house sale value. And so the way they compute that is they go and they find comparable properties of just raw land in your area. And so I just want everybody to understand you can do this on your own. You can get a good idea of what it should be, what your acreage price should be. So you can go to Zillow, click up here at the top and make sure that you're looking at only sold properties, because it doesn't matter what people are asking for properties. You want to look at what's actually sold. You can even put in somewhere, I think, about the time frame. So you want to kind of look at the past year or 2 years or so, 3 years at the most, in my opinion. And then you probably want to go over to your property type and you want to say lots, land, because you're looking for land value. Okay, apply that. And then you can go over here to filters. And one thing I will also point out is that your smaller lots, like say a 5 acre and a 10 acre plot, those parcels are actually going to yield a higher per acre value than say like 40 acres or 80 acres. So if you have 40 or 80 acres, sorry, you're going to be looking at comps that are more in that size. But if you have a 20 acre plot, then you can be looking at anything from 10 acres to 20 acres to 25 acres, kind of in the ballpark. So you might want to put those parameters in. Let's say that you have 10 acres, you can go over here to lot size and you can say, well, I want anything that's 5 acres, and your maximum, you can say 10 acres, and then hit apply. And now it's going to show you all of these sales in your area. And so just start clicking on numbers and see what they are. Let's look at this one. It says this one is a property, 8.5 acres, that sold for $345,000. And you can see that apparently it sold on, well, it says here, July 8th of 2025. That's a pretty good comp, in my opinion. So you can kind of gather some of your own comps and do this. Now, you might want to follow that with some due diligence. Go over to the Cleveland County Clerk's page, look up the parcel number, look up the address, find out if it actually did sell at that time, and you can go to the assessor's page and find out what it sold for. So you want to verify all of this information first before you pass it along, but it wouldn't hurt to have already done your homework before the appraiser comes and say, hey, look, here's 5 appraisal, or here's 5 properties that I have found that show land sales should be 32 to 35,000 an acre, versus what I have seen the appraisers come up with is anywhere from 9,000 an acre to 20,000 an acre. And then another appraiser came up with almost comps from this same area for the same size of parcel, and they came up with 32 and 35,000. So I'm not sure why that appraiser didn't use the same comps for both parcels when they were only like 2 miles apart. But anyway, that's another story for another day. So anyway, just trying to empower you guys a little bit to kind of do some of your own research and kind of be prepared when they come.
So we've had a lot of comments. I don't know, we can't go through them all, but we're going to definitely follow up on some of them. But one of them that I wanted to put up was, there's still people apparently that don't know about Pike Off OTA and all the work that we're doing, trying to help, and they're selling their homes without. And so someone brought up, let me try to find it. Right here. So Pam says, if a lot of landowners in Ward 5 are elderly, are they using social media? I'm just wondering if many don't use social media, know about Pike Off OTA and other helpful organizations and entities. So how can we reach them? I mean, I think it's got to be a neighbor talking to neighbor, because we're in the middle of some pretty big lawsuits that are really expensive, and we're fundraising for those. And as you know, mailers, even if we mail out, we mailed out for that one town hall, right, when they changed the southern extension, and that cost almost $1,000 to send it to, I don't even know, 1,200 people maybe. So mailers are pretty expensive, but we'd love for people to join our organization, and we'll print out mailers, and we can go house to house to let people know about us and what we're doing to try and stop the OTA and to help the community with these negotiations. You can go, excuse me, you can go to our website and you can watch our documentary. You can also sign up for my Substack. You can come to our events. So we have a lot of different ways to get involved, but we need people, boots on the ground. If you're retired and you have some time, we need people to go to the City of Norman meetings for us and speak. We need people to come help pass out information at different events. We do some events in the fall to let people know, and really just to pass on the word about all of the things that we've learned over the past 4.5 years, and all of the experts that we have, like Rob, that's been volunteering with us and helping us make the first inroads really against the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority in over 77 years. And I did have a point when y'all were talking, and I lost it now, but there's some actually pretty interesting comments about all of the LLCs and PUDs and all the things that are going on in the back door. And what we really need are citizens to help us sunlight this, so we can't know it all. So I'm going to follow up with some of these comments, and I hope that you'll be able to give me some information, because we can only bring to light what we know, and we can prove and with facts. And so, Kelly, if you go back through some of these comments, they're right up your alley about all the land deals and all the PUD and changing some of the land, the ag land, into commercial along those turnpikes.
That's what this is. This is a bunch of people from, OTA contractors, OTA staffers, people who work for these places who don't live in Norman, or even if they do, the big thing they want to do is they want to turn Green Ward 5 into Gray Memorial Road Kilpatrick Turnpike. What they want is they want mass sprawl development. That's what this is all about, both on the south extension and the east-west connector. This is not about necessity of transportation. This is about land, getting land, and creating a situation where they can end up destroying what Ward 5 was supposed to be all about in the first place, which was not reducing that part of the world to concrete, for very good reasons. Because of what landowners already had, and may have already had since going way back before statehood, what they may have, what our City of Norman forefathers may have been thinking in annexing this land. They annexed it not for it to become a city. They annexed it to protect the land, to protect it in its state that it is in, to protect the lake as a source of drinking water supply, and to keep from happening what a certain cartel is wanting to happen. And I think Ward 5 gets that. But we need to keep up the fight for that reason above all. Is to keep them from turning our drinking water supply, our environment, our farms and ranches, the way of life that has been purposefully set up in Ward 5 the way it is, from just trying to turn it into another city.
Yeah, and I totally agree with that. And I wanted to respond to another comment about why people think that others aren't fighting through eminent domain. And she says, because most people can't afford to retain an attorney. But I would push back on that, because you have to be willing to sacrifice in order to get a gain. And I would say that you can set up your attorney contract any way you want. You can pay hourly. You can pay that they get a percentage of the increase over your asking price. So you don't necessarily have to pay up front, right? So I would say that don't let that be the reason why you don't fight, because you have so many opportunities and information and people in Pike Off OTA that can get you to a certain place where you're now in the negotiation phase, and then you talk to the lawyer. So don't ever let that be if anyone's listening, that can't be a reason why you don't fight, because we've all had to sacrifice something, and whether that's our time in the thousands of hours and 4.5 years that we've given, whether that's our money, whether that's, our expertise, we've sacrificed something for this fight. And I think everybody has to be willing to sacrifice a little bit, but it's not that you can't afford it, it's that you can afford it. You can't afford not to, really. So it's not just the outlay of money. You don't have to do that right away. So I wanted to bring that up. Don't let that.
Well, what we do is we usually have an initial consult, it's just like dealing with the OTA. Understand that if you've gotten the letter, it's not going to be the death of you or your property if you don't have that initial consult like that afternoon or something. We usually have an initial consult when we're in these situations where we talk, we figure out their situation, their whole life situation, their whole condemnation situation. We say, here, okay, your best bet with an attorney is going to be to do the case like X, hourly or contingent or something like that. That's going to be your best bet, and you need to go with the best deal, whether it's us or someone else, that you can get that's going to be the best deal for you in the short term and the long term for an attorney. And that could be a variety of different things that I can't tell you, depending on your situation, that are going to be the best way for you to do it. But don't feel like I can't afford one.
Right.
Because there are ways, and there are lawyers, and there's, whether it be us or it be someone who you can't afford. And the flip side of the coin, the old saying is, you can't afford not to.
Correct.
When you get in that situation, because
Right.
at the back end, if you don't get the good professionals in line early, you're going to suffer on the back end and wish you had gotten the professionals in place. Another example with appraisers, Kelly talked about a DIY way of doing your own kind of little comparable analysis. The appraisers and realtor community will do that kind of market analysis for you too. For cheap, affordable. I don't want to speak for appraisers. I always say I don't want to speak for the appraiser or the realtor and say it's going to be absolutely free, but it's going to be much more affordable than the full-blown appraisal for a good realtor, or even the appraiser that you eventually use to first have them do that kind of sneak peek work.
Yeah.
Sometimes they call it a market analysis. I kind of could just call it, okay, a first look, without doing a full-blown appraisal yet. Let's let them do the stuff that they just can do by looking around and not investing in an appraisal, by looking around and coming back and saying, okay, I think, yeah, you just got a real bad lowball appraisal for the
That's
OTA.
right.
Things like that.
Yeah, so again, to reiterate everything we've been saying, we want you to fight and not settle with them. And Mike Brule makes a good point. It's not just about the OTA, and that's the OTA is trying to force this Kilpatrick 2.0, like Rob said. But we have other things in play too. The AIM 2045 master plan. We weren't happy about a lot of that, and the Cleveland County Commissioners signing a resolution of cooperation with the OTA. Like, that's why we need volunteers to be able to watch the Cleveland County Commissioners, to be able to interact with our City of Norman ward representatives and council people and staff, and because it's from all state, county, local levels that the developers are trying to work their $1 billion plan to bust up the rural living of Ward 5 and East and North Norman, and even other wards than that. But it's not just the OTA, it's the city, it's the county. And so we need we've been fighting at the city level. The city of Norman was the first city in Oklahoma history to tell the OTA no, and we could have kept them out, except then the directors at OTA went to the Cleveland County Commissioners and had them say yes to a resolution. Now, there's still litigation, Rob, to be had on that because the county doesn't own Indian Hills. And how is the county going to give them permission to touch Indian Hills? Because the city owns it. And so now there's going to be this thing, and we could have 10 other podcasts on why the city of Norman is so reluctant to sue and reluctant to put their feet down and all that thing. But it's going to come to it when they start to put these interchanges in, that the county's going to figure out that they don't own it. And so again, it's going to have to be a lawsuit, because who's going to stop the OTA at that point if they're going to touch Indian Hills? And there's a whole bunch of other avenues that we've got, and there's actually statute that the city can stand on in terms of permitting and things like that. And so I want everybody to know that just because they're making a big deal about this Canadian River crossing, we've got the federal lawsuit for an injunction to stop that and make them do the right environmental impact statements and surveys. And we've got a lot of things brewing, and everything takes money. And so we're going on a big fundraising kick that we need to raise. Our goal is $250,000. This is an old one. In the last month, we've raised about $12,500, so we're about $62,500, which is great. I have to change this. But if you are willing to sacrifice a little bit for us, for the good of the community, we'd happily keep fighting for you. We are all volunteers. We do not get paid. We put hundreds, thousands, Kelly and I mean, 4.5 years, even Rob, thousands of hours donated to the cause. But we do need money to pay for lawsuits and to pay for education for the community to get the word out. And so if you feel like you want to donate, I'll drop the donate link in the chat, and you can send us a check to our P.O. box, so you can save you get a processing fee every time we use online, or you can include the processing fee when you donate. But even $10 a month or $15 a month really helps out.
I would say ideally what all this fundraising talks about, to talk about what it tangibly does, is yes, it pays for lead legal counsel and a little bit for my firm on the federal lawsuit, which is extremely important. But like United Way, I think we want to make that little red thing squirt out at the top of that $250,000, because it's not only paying for a federal lawsuit, because people want to know where their money's going. Mm-hmm. It's not only paying for a federal lawsuit, it's going to give you two other things. It's going to be to pay for an initiative petition, which we need to get some legal rulings from the Supreme Court on some bad laws that were passed a couple of years ago to make it possible for us to do that. But it's going to pay for an initiative petition. It's going to pay for helping, ideally, and this is another reason why we need people to give, is it's going to help pay for people at the grassroots to get banded together and fight maybe eminent domain cases on the South Extension, band together, so no one person needs to feel like, okay, I'm going to fight the taking, and I'm going to fight what they're giving me. Oh my gosh, this is going to cost a lot of money. I don't have it, so I might as well not fight. But if all the landowners get together and people donate, we can not only complete this federal lawsuit, we can fight eminent domain, help them fight eminent domain cases with banded together landowners on the South Extension and on other places of the East-West Connector where the land deals aren't done. And then ultimately we can fund the end game of an initiative petition. And so those are, three tangible things you can think of. What's my money going to? Federal lawsuit already pending. Fighting eminent domain, both at the court level, legislative level, political level. 3, the initiative petition to get this thing won once and for all, regardless of what any courts or legislators say. The people will come in for us if we can get ourselves in a situation where we have the people voting. We don't have to rely on what the courts would say or what the legislature would say in passing a law. We can
Right.
pass a law.
And we're a certified official 501c3 and a 501c4. So you can pick which one. If you'd like the tax deduction, you can go to the 501c3. If you want your money to go towards specifically fighting legislation and you know, on more the political side, you can go to the 501c4. But we do spend our money extremely wisely, and we have a very low overhead. We pay for our website and a bunch of, you know, the tech stuff that we need to talk to everybody. But we think we've been very successful, and
Like
we
the
think we have-
StreamYard.
Yeah, the StreamYard costs money, but we think we're pretty successful, and we'd like to get back at the Supreme Court and have them reverse what they did, because they made a pretty wrong ruling for sure. And we hope the federal courts will rule in our favor, and we should hopefully, I don't know, Rob, I'd like to say we'd hear from them in 30 days, but I have no idea, so whatever. I mean, we're waiting a year on this other lawsuit about the initiative petition thing, so.
Right.
It takes that.
I pulled it up in base extension of time, so I don't know how long, but did you see that, Rob?
What?
They filed for an extension of time to
What?
respond.
No, yeah. That's the one thing that we in the legal profession get a little clue before.
I just pulled it up
do.
on Pacer.
No, that has to do. If you want to know, now that you said that, Kelly, now I got to explain to everybody what
Oh, sorry.
OTA and the federal agencies have a right. They don't have. You're talking about the federal lawsuit. They don't have to file. The federal agencies don't have to file an answer to the complaint until August 25th. And so the OTA came in and said, let's make our answer date the same day. And the court said yes, and we said, of course, they're going to be entitled to that relief. But a motion for preliminary injunction and request for hearing on that is also on the table. And technically, that is not the same thing. And I think we're trying to work on nudging the court into setting dates and doing that and getting that moving along.
And one other important thing that's happening this week, on the 30th of July, we believe that the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority is going back to the Council for Bond Oversight to ask for bonds. So they haven't put out the agenda yet, but in the last OTA meeting, they said that because, you know, they were supposed to go last month and we filed an objection and then they postponed it, they didn't have a quorum. So now they're saying in their meeting, they said they were going to go back again July 30th. I haven't seen we've open record requested their application. Haven't seen that, of course, because everything's always last minute. And so hopefully if they do go and ask for the bonds, what is it, $1.5 billion more in bonds, hopefully we can get them to say no because there's a lawsuit pending. And I'll put out a Substack about that explains that, you know, when you have a lawsuit pending in the statutes, they're not supposed to be able to give them the bond money. So that would be awesome if that happened on Thursday, but we'll see.
Today I'll be sending the state bond advisor and the council our motion for preliminary injunction, which hadn't been filed when they canceled their last meeting. Just the complaint had been filed, but now we have the motion for preliminary injunction filed, so I'll send that to them.
Good.
To make sure it's still front and center.
And I put the link in the comments so everybody can be checking on that meeting page to see when they post the agenda. According to the Open Meetings Act, they are required to post the agenda 24 hours in advance. Of course, they're supposed to post the application that's been submitted for the bonds too, but that never happens, and you have to open record request it, and no one ever gets, the citizens never know what's going on until, you know, you have someone like a group like Pike Off OTA who's watching them like hawks and requesting things through open record requests so we can read it, and then we'll have less than 24 hours to figure out what they said. But if you're available and if we're on the agenda and you're available, it's going to be 10 a.m. on Thursday, July 30th, up at the Capitol in MP room 100. So you can come see the fireworks there. Hopefully they're all in our favor. Well, thank you, Rob, for coming on today and explaining to
Okay.
everyone. And we want you to come back again and explain some more things when we get some questions. But I think everyone in
Great.
the chat, we've had a ton of comments, and we'll put them all together and put them in a Substack and answer some more things that were put in those comments. But we appreciate all your work for us and for the citizens of Oklahoma and other areas like the Cleveland County, the TIF arena, the Rock Creek TIF, and all that. So it's all us fighting against them, right? So we're all
Yeah, we're all
the
these
little people.
mega projects that are harmful to rank and file citizens, and we're getting ready to file a motion for preliminary injunction on the arena TIF deal too.
Fantastic.
We've responded to some motions to dismiss, and we're getting ready to do that. And I think the
Good.
timing is good because I'm about to run out of battery on my iPad.
Okay, good. Well, thank you so much, and
Okay.
everybody else. We'll see you again next week.
Okay.
Take care.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye, guys. Have a good day.
Thank you for joining us on the Right of Way Report, a podcast by Pike-Off OTA. You can join us here every Monday morning at 10 a.m., where we will bring you updates on legislation, litigation, and landowner information.